abnormal. Sometimes got a normal one. I didn't know I was seeing those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? What was your favorite abnormal psychology thing that you studied for it?
I would have to say it was more of the futuristic side of things, which a lot of people don't yet know about because it hasn't come yet. But I really studied a lot with young children and their future getting older.
So was medication involved in your study at all?
No, it was all psychological.
But not anything that revolved around balancing out chemicals in the brain or anything?
No, because I came to the conclusion there are no chemicals in your brain.
So, but that's the basis of psychology is the chemicals in our brain. So,
Yeah,
were you trying to completely change the definition of psychology?
Let me
with your
show you.
thesis?
Let me give you an example.
Oh, is Mom still home?
You see this wrapper? It's a dove heart-shaped one. But there's really not a dove heart-shaped chocolate in there. It's a treasure chest. And that's what I think of when I think of a human mind is a treasure chest full of surprises.
Like a Pandora's box.
Exactly. A Pandora's box full of surprises, things that we have not yet discovered until you really have to pry into it and get in there, pull it out. And sometimes it's not what you expected. This was chocolate.
So our brains are made of chocolate.
No, that was an example.
Oh.
But no, I mean, go ahead and ask me any more questions.
So I can call you Dr. Johnson then, right?
I do have my doctorate in psychology.
How many years did that take you?
More than I know how to count. Probably like 3.
From start to finish?
Yeah, I did summer school and night school while working a full-time job.
Wait, so online? Which online university did you go to? Because I need to know, like.
Well, I know there's a lot of videos on YouTube about it, so that's what I spent all my time doing, watching psychology videos on YouTube.
Oh.
And then there's one, it was like I can't remember what it's called, but then I had to fill out some papers.
Well, so where'd you do your clinical hours at?
Just the hospital.
Yeah? Like the mental hospital or like?
It was an old folks home. Like I said, I like working with the
I thought you said you
the
liked
young
working with
kids,
young kids.
But that's what happens. See, they're young and unexperienced, and they get really old and senile, and it's just like working with young kids. So that was kind of in my field too. So.
Well, so it's kind of like you were able to see the future of psychology as you went from studying young children to old people. It was like the whole lifespan.
Yeah, but there's a certain gap that I didn't really like to focus on because I feel like between the ages of 20 and the ages of 40, those people just are very unimportant to society. So I just spent a lot of time with the older people and the younger people, and really, if I take that age group out from 20 to 40, just take them out completely, and you put a young person, completely young, completely psychologically impaired person, and you put them with an extremely old person whose mind is gone, it's almost like they can work together and bond on chemicals, and you put in their brains, and then they can become like normal again.
I thought you said there were no chemicals in the brain.
That's what we just have to say. We have to put the chemicals in their brain to make it work right.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so how old are you, Dr. Johnson?
I'm 21.
You're 21?
Mm-hmm.
So, what makes you think that I should accept your contributions to the field of psychology if you said 20 to 40 is unimportant?
I mean, I have proof from tests that I've done. It's been proven that my theory is correct. It was at one time a theory and something that people, they could be, but after many tests, it was proven.
It was proven. So it's no longer a theory. It's fact.
It's fact now.
It's fact.
Yep, it's fact. For example, his name is Jaden. He was once a young child. And that's just living proof that they can become older.
Living proof right here.
So how do you explain the children with the rare disorders that they aren't able to age?
I must be unaware of that.
Are they not human? Because that's what my thesis was on.
Good, how are you?
No, they are. The thing is they're mentally not aging, which does happen frequently.
Well, I'm speaking of the ones that physically don't
Oh,
age.
physically don't change. See, that happens on a regular basis in Indonesia.
Yeah? I heard they smoke cigarettes in Indonesia, the 2-year-olds and stuff. Do you think that is what contributes?
I think that's what causes what we would call sudden cross-eyed disorder syndrome.
What? Sudden cross-eyed disorder syndrome.
Which really causes their eyes to,
SCSS.
you know, like when they suck, makes their eyes cross.
But what about as babies when they nurse on their mother's teat?
See, when they get in this habit of when they're smoking, they exhale, and that's where they fall out of the habit
That's
of knowing
where
how to breastfeed. They forget.
It unbalances the eyes, which brings us back to the chemical imbalances in our brains.
That's where we get the chemicals. We inject them in their brains, and it allows them to fully develop and grow to be a real human being, real full size. Is what I'm trying to say.
Full-size human being. All right. So
Which
how do you explain that?
Not saying obesity, because I feel like that's wrong. But just regular size.
Well, wait, where do midgets fall in this guy?
That's one of those rare occasions we talked about where people don't get their problems fixed as babies.
So do you think that like the color of one's skin is related to the lack of chemicals in their brain, or?
No, I think it just has a lot to do with what color their parents were.
Crazy.
Yeah. Can you expand on that?
No, I can't.
Well, I can give you a couple examples.
Hello?
For example, my parents, they were both white, so I
Yeah,
came out white.
I'm home.
But Ella
I'm in
Whitlock,
Bangkok. I just came over
his
to,
mom was
Stevie
brown,
Johnson's house 'cause my
and his
companion
dad was
was
white.
welcome from
They
the
put them
NBC.
together, and they made like this
Yeah.
tan color thing, which was Ella Whitlock.
Is that why his name is Phil?
Yep.
Philip?
Yeah.
Alright,
That makes sense.
but
I see where you're going with this.
Filipino almost is kind of where they were going with it. But the reason they didn't go all the way and say Filipino is because he wasn't full Filipino. Just half.
That would have just been
Just
disrespectful.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you explain then when old people shrink as they get older?
Oh,
what about that? Can you explain that one?
one thing I could say about old people and snow sculptures is over time, with the sun beating on them and their work and what they do, eventually they get a little smaller, and that's what's going to happen to everybody. We can't go around that. And the thing is the whole thing is most of it's mental. These old people,
Yeah.
they think they're really getting old, but in reality, if they would just mentally tell themselves that they're fine, it would be okay, and they wouldn't have to struggle with diabetes and heart disease and cancer.
I see where you're going, because
liver and lung disease and
I'm actually 55 years old.
see, and that's what I was saying. See, you must have been on my program for at least 10 years. to
Well,
show these kind of
I
results.
tested this theory out because I actually came up with it probably like 30 years ago when I was still 25.
That's what I did too when I was younger. So,
30 years ago?
well, that was like when my dad started, and I picked
So
up
that's
with
how you
that.
got into the psychology field, was through your father.
Yeah, his theories were a little different than mine. But
What's
I
his
feel like
specialty? I mean, who's his greatest influence from the psychology field?
Albert Einstein.
Yeah? He's a mathematician.
Which has a lot to do with psychology.
What do you think Freud?
Well, I really admire the fella.
I mean, he came up with a lot of contributions, the 5 psychosexual stages of development.
I don't really like to talk about sexual stages of development.
But it was such an integral part of the early psychology
I mean,
field.
that goes back to what I was talking about, the early fetus development pill or other, and his mother's, her psychological disorders and things that cause SIDS, which can also affect her past babies or her future ones. So.
I see. So, well, that kind of goes into, I think that's where Erik Erikson came up with his theory that those psychosexual stages are actually developed over the lifespan.
Of how many kids?
Well, the lifespan of a child and an adult, you know?
Do you remember when you were younger?
Some of it.
Tell me about what happened when you were at church when you were 6 years old.
When I was 6
On
years
May.
old.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you.
See, you know why he couldn't tell you? Because psychologically, it's something that we can't fully develop our past memories. We can't just bring those back.
That's interesting because I specifically remember, let's see, I was 8 years old, it was August 7th. I remember exactly what I did on that day.
That was your birthday, wasn't it?
How much did you tell him?
That was such a good guess.
You see, the reason I know that is because I've been through so much schooling in my life the past 3 years that can prove all of my theories, all of my ideas.
Well, they're not
And
theories
most
if we can
important-
prove them.
Exactly, and that's what I'm trying to do right now, is prove it. But one thing that I think you must understand is that nobody knows everything, but things can be proven.
Well, God
Just
knows
like-
everything.
I mean, put this into some real thought. And I want you to think about this and tell me what it means. If wishes were fishes, we'd all have a fry. If horse turds were biscuits, we'd eat till we die.
She sells seashells by the seashore. What's that mean to you?
Well, I went fishing one time and I saw some slugs and snails and stuff on the road.
Yeah? What about seashells?
No.
Why do you think she sold the seashells by the seashore?
Because she had easier access to them.
And that's, you know, that right there proves your thesis that, you know, it didn't take chemicals in her brain for her to figure that
Can I
out.
share something with you out of this book that'll really prove something?
Yeah.
It's on page 108, second paragraph down. It says, some borrowers borrow for purposes that bring money into their life, which will, in the long run, cause them to struggle from, I can't read that word, questions
Need some help?
that,
Can't you read that, please?
well, I just summed up with the word questions, which will lead to other different things. Like, for example, think of the word, or not the word, tell me what this means. What is the definition of Y-A-Y-W? Y-A-Y-W.
Oh. Youth are,
Youth are.
right? I remember reading about
you got
this.
That part.
Youth are yonder wavering.
Young and wavering.
No, yonder, I think it was.
No, youth are young and wavering. Which leads to the next point. Like I said, they're young, they're wavering. You know, it's a whole psychological deal, and I think we can all agree on that. So the next thing is, and the most important thing is where they have a pit of sorrows, which can lead to many psychological problems, such as cancer. And You know, it's avoidable.
I heard it causes bone spurs as well.
Bone what?
Bone spurs.
Oh.
I'm sorry, you must have thought I said bone burrs or something similar.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Sounded like that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's what happens, and bone spurs are very uncomfortable.
So, if adults continue to develop these psychological disorders, would it be wise that no one ever reproduces?
Well,
Do you think that would eradicate?
I think it would be hard not to reproduce, considering the fact that we are all born with those reproductive organs. And
well, Dr. Johnson, how do you propose that we remedy that then?
well, I mean, there's a lot that you can do. I mean, Will Ferrell. I don't know if you know who Will Ferrell is, but he shared an experience.
I believe he's an early psychological historian, correct?
Yeah, and an actor. He played,
From that documentary.
Talladega Nights. Yeah, from the documentary Talladega Nights, which is a big part of history. But what I think was really intriguing about
race
his
car history.
what's
That's right.
intriguing about his stance on the psychological side of things, he was talking about bungee jumping
Yes.
and how he came into this world. And he said,
He did come into this world.
and what he said was, he came into this world because of Broken Road, right? Which a lot of people might think is funny. And then
That's not funny at all.
It's not funny, and that's a problem we face. And then he was talking about bungee jumping, and he said, you know, I came into the world because of Broken River, and I'm not about to leave it because of Broken River. And it's because he psychologically knew that what bungee jumping could do could cause him to die. Which was wise of him to not go, because I wouldn't go either, because you could die doing that, right? If it broke.
So what you're saying is that as long as the rubber doesn't break, then we will no longer need to worry about reproductory tendencies and habits.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But at the same time, if we did that, then my whole career would be on the line.
You would have no young children to work with.
I would have no young children to work with. And if I had no young children to work with, the old people would all die. And
so the unimportant generation between the ages of 20 and 40 is what would carry this society, and they're going to
so
become
I would
important.
have to change my focus, because if I didn't change my focus, they would all be doomed.
See, I see a lot of holes and inconsistencies in your thesis that you have presented to me this day.
Not a thesis. It's a
fact.
Fact, yeah. Would you like your book back? I mean, I read a lot of proof out of your book that supports my facts.
Well, that's weird because on page 73...
I think you should go back a few pages. That was the page I was reading.
No, you were on 103. Close. You both have 3 in it. Arcad. Do you remember Arcad? Says, here is a tale most unusual. What wisdom doth it suggest? And when we're presented with hypothetical situations such as that, it leaves the flaws in your factual theory wide open.
Well, if you think about this, I was once told that a happy father is the best kind of father. Which will completely prove what you just said wrong. So.
And right there is why I question everything that I've ever grown up believing. Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
You're welcome. And if you have more questions, you can call me at 31241.
That was almost a 6-digit phone number.